Hello, everyone. My name is Cameron.
And I'm Brett.
And you're listening to The Last Alliance, a Rings of Power podcast.
We know it's a dangerous business going out your door, or when choosing a podcast, but we're glad you've joined our adventure as we discuss The Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power.
And so it begins.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. How are we all doing after that?
Wow. Just wow. I think that I'm still digesting what just happened.
I struggled to take notes because I was sitting there with a clenched jaw the whole time.
An open jaw for me.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
there was just one right after the other there. It was crazy. And as much as I loved what was happening, it was also a small shot to the heart every time, because I think literally everything I thought was going to happen this episode, well, 90% did not happen.
Not only did it not happen, but 90% of how I thought things were going to go went exactly the opposite.
Exactly the opposite. Yes.
Which is incredible, because we know that Eregion falls. We know that they fail. And I think they still managed to have us at the edge of our seat, holding on for dear life. I think we knew the dwarves, at least I knew dwarves weren't coming up over that Sunrise Hill. But still.
And that's the thing. We knew that last season, right? We talked long and hard about how it was just setting us up for a heartbreak. But I put my bold prediction in, hoping, a vain hope, but hope.
A fool's hope.
A fool's hope, yep. Well, should we just dive into the good, bad, and great and use that as our launch pad for the rest of it?
Yes, with the caveat that I am all over the map. And I don't even know what to call my bad. I don't know if it was good. I don't know if it was sad or terrible or wonderful. So let's try.
I'm right there with you. And that pretty much is a succinct description of the episode in general. All over the map. Not sure what was going on.
Okay, let's do it then. Cameron, why don't you start us off? Give us your good.
So my good was when I really, for two reasons. I really liked when Sauron was describing to Celebrimbor what it was like to be enslaved by Morgoth. Whether or not he was enslaved, not sure. I'm pretty sure he chose his path to an extent. But it was just, I liked it because it's something that is not super talked about by Tolkien, of, you know, what it was like in Morgoth's thrall, in his kingdom, blah, 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 right? It was usually just something described from the outside looking in. So it was nice to hear their kind of interpretation of that. And I especially liked it when Celebrimbor snapped his thumb off and re-quoted the part about the strength of wills. It was a contest to see whose will was stronger. I thought that was a nice touch.
That was. And I want to get into this maybe later, so maybe we can just put this on the back burner right now. But how much credit do we give Celebrimbor at the end for sticking up to Sauron, cutting off his thumb, trying to make it as least bad as possible?
Yeah, let's come back
for the guy.
Let's come back to Brimby, because he's also my great.
Good. I love your good. My good, I loved the orc army. I loved the costuming, the makeup when Galadriel's walking through the camp on her escape. Like, that's the stuff of nightmares. And I thought they did a really good job of making them look really scary.
Yeah, they did.
I dollars well spent on the orc army.
So well, in fact, that it was hard to empathize with Lieutenant Orc, whatever his name is.
Glook.
Yeah, who is like, "What about my family?" when he looks like he just ate his family. Okay, what was your bad?
The Eregion army. And this goes back to the point I made in Second Breakfast of just the numbers being really small. And they kind of said, oh, we're outnumbered 10 to 1. Yeah, it looked like 50 to 1.
Or 100 to 1.
Yeah, we've got the Elven Smiths, just they're Smiths, but they're also like the chief archers. They just throw on a helmet and they're the ones doing the fighting. No organization, no class, no nothing. They were doomed from the beginning.
Now, how much of that do you think was Sauron's influence versus their own incompetence?
I guess you could go the route of Sauron just totally decimated all affairs of the city.
Yeah.
But I also feel like because it's been a pattern, I also feel like it's just the direction of the show to not really make the scale of these armies as big as they could be.
That is true.
So I'll sit here and to have good feelings, I'll say it was Sauron who just decimated all semblance of organization.
Yeah, and I agree with you because there's a few times with the orc army that you saw, and even with the elves when they were charging with their horses, right? Like there were some good numbers there, but then when and when the orc army is like when they're marching with Adar at the end across the river, like there's some good numbers there. But then when you go to like pretty wide views of certain battles, it's like I think that there's like 20 people occupying a full acre of land right there in the riverbed. So that's to your point. Yeah, they need to be more consistent with their big number scenes because they do have some scenes, but they're not consistent in how they depict it.
Can I share one more bad?
Yeah.
And it's not a bad in that I didn't agree with the writers or the directors, but a bad of, oh no, is Arondir dead? Is he gone? And I'm sitting here like, crap, I am not ready for this tragedy infused story that I've been propping up all season. I'm not ready. I don't want Arondir to die yet.
Well, we said last time that, or at least I did, I can't remember if you did, but we said last time that we thought Arondir was going to stick with it throughout most of the show as the token Legolas, right? So,
and I joked, I said, well, are we going to feel good if Adar kills Arondir? And I'm like, oh no, I feel awful for joking about that. Come on, Arondir. Come on, man.
Well, and I think he's pretty dead. He got stabbed up pretty good. So I think he's a goner. It didn't show his last breath per se, but
Cue Waldrig.
he's gonna rise with Waldrig from the dead. All right, well, my bad. I also have two. First one was it's this season's version of the volcanic explosion and ensuing cloud, right?
You mean from like a scientific standpoint?
Yeah, the realistic standpoint of the damming of the river. I'm sorry, that's just not happening the way that they depicted it. And it's like you could have done it a million other ways, but that mountain is not gonna just slide off because you threw 5 boulders at it. Not gonna happen. Like maybe it got that one that was like leaning already ready to fall. But even if it gets that one is the way it was set up, it's not doing the domino effect that they tried depicting there, especially with like the whole landslide afterward. And it was just like you guys could have done a lot better. There's like a million things you could have chosen in how to dam up that river, but here we are. Here we are.
Just gotta believe in orc calculus, and then it's fine.
Like, you imagine how much dynamite it would take to actually do what we just saw, and that would be an explosion from a hole drilled into the rock. And then think about, no, same effect if you just throw 5 boulders at it. No, I don't think so. So that was my first bad.
That's good bad. That's a good bad.
My second bad is actually going to go against your good. I did not like the again, it's a realistic thing for me. Galadriel, no way in Hades is she walking around that orc camp without being found out immediately. She is an elf. She has blonde hair. She's taller than 95% of them. Especially, I would assume, the females. I have yet to see a tall female orc. And I'm just like, there's no, especially when she goes to help them lift the one thing. Like, I'm thinking back to
Yeah, that
when
was a little weird.
Frodo and Sam are sneaking through Mordor, right? And they have the masks on at least, and they're halflings, so they're about the same size, maybe a little bit shorter. And also, they've been like in Shelob's lair, hanging out with Golem, prisoners up to this point, so they smell super nasty like all the orcs do. So they're not going to smell an elf. Like, you think of all the times the orcs and uruks are able to sniff out, a man or especially an elf. And it's like, there is just no way she is sneaking through there without some kind of like a magic cloak. Anyway, bad part 2.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I actually was sitting there watching it, same thoughts, but then I was thinking back to Return of the King, Frodo and Sam sneaking around, and that's the one part that kind of bugs me in that movie is like they are clearly these white-skinned non-orcs.
But they're covered up head to toe.
Well, so was she. And it was
No,
dark. It was
her
darker.
face and her hair is sticking out of the middle of that hood.
I agree. I don't understand why we had her carrying the dead body out. It seemed like the hood would have fallen off or
and
something.
especially when she's walking around with like her head buried in the crux of her forearm and bicep. It was like, no one else is walking around like that, girlfriend. Someone is gonna think that you're weird, at least. Like, the sun's not out. I don't know why you're walking around like it is. Are you okay?
To be fair to the one medic, the orc medic, she did call her out on it. Her
Finally,
and 2 others,
yeah.
yes. And
when it didn't matter.
their last act of orc life was discovering the disguise of Galadriel.
Yep. All right. What was your great?
Okay. I was terrified when Elrond went in for the kiss. I screamed. I was like, nope, that's it. That's the end of the show. But it all makes sense now. And I think it was cleverly done. That's how he got the key to her. And I was even saying to Matt before, like, oh, that's what he meant when he said, forgive me. I'm coming in for a kiss. That's what he meant, is like, I'm coming in Sandlot style and just go with it. And it took us a while to realize, oh, that's how he got the key to her. But I thought that was pretty darn clever.
So that was the part in the movie where I audibly said, no. No.
No.
And I am actually on the fence with what they're gonna do with Elrond and Galadriel. And for all of you who don't know or can't remember, the reason it's so weird, right, is because Galadriel is technically married to what should be a living elf named Celeborn. He's got to be living because he's in the Return of the King. Okay. Not only that, but also Elrond actually is supposed to marry their daughter.
Galadriel.
Yes, who, by the way, that one fan theory kind of died that we heard about a couple weeks ago of Mirdania being a stage name for
Yeah.
Celebrion.
Literally died.
Yep. So that was why it was kind of weird. Is he's supposed to marry Galadriel's daughter? Galadriel is way older than him, and she's married. So all of those reasons, it was weird.
And that's why we were terrified, right? But I don't think there was anything romantic in it at all. I think it was purely tactical.
See, that's where I'm like there definitely was tactics to drop the key. But there was also very good acting, at least. It was a moment before you knew that the key was actually part of the gesture.
You think so?
Am I right?
I think they put it
Did
in.
you think that the key transfer was happening before the kiss happened?
No. And that's why I was worried, but I'm not worried anymore. Once I realized that there was
That's
some
where I'm
tongue.
saying there was so much feeling there that it fooled you for a second.
Well, yeah. But then you look at
So,
Galadriel's face afterward, and she's like got this key sitting in her mouth, and she's like, "Whoa, what in the world was that?" But so I'm not worried. I think it's going to be just fine. I think it's going to be okay. I was worried. I'm not worried anymore.
well, I'm not saying
You,
one way or the other right now, but I'm on the fence. The writers could do anything. There's a reason Celeborn is not in the show and presumed
okay,
dead.
okay. I'm 3% worried.
Okay, good. Celeborn is presumed dead, and no mention of Celebrion. Who does that leave Elrond and Galadriel to love?
Durin?
The Valar, I guess. I don't know. All right, well,
But that's what we're saying. We're all over the map with our good, bad, great this
yes.
week. It's just all over.
Yes.
I did have one more great. Can I do one more great?
Yes. Please.
And I think it'll lead into yours. It seems like Galadriel is finally starting to show us her true quality that we know Galadriel as. Her little run-in with Arondir, she spoke in a very measured tone and said, "No, we need you. You know, don't throw your life away."
I wrote the exact same comment down with that Arondir scene.
Yeah. This is Galadriel, who's been so consumed by rage and a myopic view of defeating Sauron, and she's got some new perspective. And then her meeting with Celebrimbor. I love that. Yep, Celebrimbor got caught in cahoots with Sauron, but the first thing she says is to the soldiers, "How dare you? This is the greatest of all elven smiths. Get your acts together." And she defends him like a true friend. I thought that was just a gold star scene for Galadriel. I was thrilled to see it.
Yep. Yeah, I had the same thoughts with Arondir. It was like, okay, we are finally getting past the whatever the cost, kill them all, Galadriel, to the, caring about the individual and not thinking that, everything has got to be done right now. My great, I wrote down Brimby, all of him. I just loved him from start to finish this episode. Celebrimbor, the actor, did a fantastic job, in my opinion, of playing this character who is enthralled in this mental game with Sauron, and did a great job breaking free of it, and so far has done well standing up to him. We will see how long that lasts now that he's actually going to get some torture, it looks like. But so far, loved Celebr. This was Celebrimbor's episode, in my opinion. This was his time to shine. MVP of the episode.
Absolutely, 100%. I would say, I'd be tempted to say you could put him in an argument for MVP of the season.
Yeah, you really could.
You look at just the whole arc of him at the start and just this total decline.
Yeah.
Meticulously captured. And then at the end, he comes to his senses and he's willing to risk it all to try and repair whatever he can. And that's why I mentioned, what credit do we give him?
Yeah, how'd you like how he was able to catch the pattern that was repeating itself? I thought that was pretty smart.
I'm looking forward to watching the episodes again and seeing if it's something that the audience could catch.
Yeah, true.
Because that was really cool. And the whole candle thing, I love that it just shows like he's still willing to fight, even though there's this subconscious of him that's totally given into Sauron. His will is still fighting to be mightier than Sauron's.
Yes. All right, do you want to talk about rings now or later?
So before we go on, we did get an awesome email from Matt from Ohio with a last-minute prediction for what would happen in episode 7. It didn't exactly pan out, but we were all really impressed with this prediction. We thought it worth mentioning. He says, before episode 7 drops, I want to make a quick prediction that Celebrimbor will put on one of the 9 rings and see Sauron in his true form, like Mirdania did. And that would be when we get the scene that we saw in the trailers when Celebrimbor asks, "What have you done to me?" and apparently tries to destroy the rings by throwing them in the fire. Sauron says, "You will give me the 9." Didn't exactly happen that way, but love the imagination.
That would have been epic.
That would have been really cool.
Yep, that would have been epic. Especially
Jeff,
we would have gotten to see a glimpse of the unseen world a little early. We would have gotten to see a little bit of what Sauron looks like. Yeah, that'd have been a great idea. That'd have been a great idea. Speaking of the rings, though, there's a few questions I have for you. What did you think about how they too could not be destroyed and were cool to the touch?
That's what I wrote down. We're getting this iterative progression towards the, I don't know if perfect's the right word, but the quality and the characteristics of the One Ring, right?
Mm-hmm. But the thing that I remember from the One Ring is it had to be destroyed where it was created, right? In the fires of Mount Doom. So that's what's kind of not tracking for me so far with these ones, is they weren't really made in the fires of Mount Doom. So are they just indestructible, period? Like they can't even be destroyed in the forge they were made?
Yeah, I'm not totally sure. It doesn't seem like it seems like Celebrimbor kind of threw him in the little side fire, and maybe we just weren't trying hard enough or didn't get enough chances to destroy him.
You're saying maybe he had to like melt down some ore and throw them in?
Maybe.
Like the One Ring had to go into the lava?
Yeah, maybe.
That's possible. Yeah.
Can I just, I want to make sure I didn't miss it, but as of episode end, Galadriel has the rings.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, which was another turn for me. I did not think that the rings were going to leave Eregion. Well, and they still might not, because next episode, her and Sauron face off.
This felt like a finale episode.
It sure did. And I ended with not only trying to digest what had just happened, but also wondering, well, what the heck is going to happen next episode?
That's a question, and maybe for our listeners, I'd be interested to know what everyone thinks is going to be the last shot of this season.
Yeah,
If you have any ideas.
because I totally thought this episode, I thought that they were going to simply dam the river, because I was like, it's going to take a minute for it to drain, then it's going to take a long minute for it to be dry enough that they can actually walk across it, which also factors into my bad, by the way, because you notice that the orcs had no problem walking across it immediately, but then the horses that the elves were riding are just swimming in a bog, and I'm like, okay, yep. So I kind of thought that that's as far as we were going to get, is the damming of the river this episode, and then the actual like battle was going to be the finale next episode. But we're kind of done with the battle, honestly. The orcs have busted the wall; they're breaking in. The elven army that came to help is gone. The dwarves are MIA. We're done.
Looks like we just have some post-battle negotiations to go through.
/ torture.
Yeah.
So
Is Brimby gonna die next episode?
I think, like we've said before, he's either going to die next episode or he's going to die really early in season 3.
Yeah. I have another question about Brimby. So at the start of the season, Galadriel gets a vision of him, right? Getting tortured and dying. But in that vision, he is reciting in black speech the One Ring poem. Do you think we're going to see that happen in real time? Do you think we're going to see the origins of that poem? Is he going to be forced to say it? Is he going to be bewitched to say it by the end? Or was that just a poetic vision?
Who knows? Because Sauron obviously has the plan already, right? So the idea is conjured somewhere. I would assume it's out there in the ether of the unseen world. And I think Celebrimbor is passing more and more into the unseen world. So maybe by the time he gets to death, he'll be pretty well connected with it and utter those words as a warning, maybe, to anyone who might be able to listen and do something about it.
We've had little Easter eggs with the title of the episodes throughout the season. We had Elven Kings Under the Sky, Halls of Stone. This one was Doomed to Die. Each little snippets from the lines of the poem.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if the title of the last episode will be something like "The Dark Lord on His Dark Throne," or something referring to kind of that climax of that poem with Sauron being the
"In the darkness bind them."
Oh, there it is. That's what the whole promo for this season was all about. Darkness will bind them.
Boom.
In the darkness bind them.
Is that the title of the next episode?
Jeff, you really should be listening to us.
You heard it here first.
If not from your writers like 2 years ago.
Yeah, so for all of you who are out there listening, if that is the title of next episode, it was our idea. I don't care what Amazon has to say about it. It was our idea.
Okay, should we get to more of the episode?
Well, I want to do more about the rings first real quick.
Okay.
So, another thing I was proven wrong on is the mithril, right? It was really his blood that we were putting into the 9 rings. Which
we didn't just sprinkle the blood on it. We
put spoonfuls of it. Yeah. Which, shout out to Kenzie. She called that part, by the way. And what do you think that impact is on the 9 rings versus the others? Is there no actual mithril in those rings? What impact does that have? And where are they getting power from?
Matt, you and I were talking about this a little bit. We're trying to decide, was there any mithril at all, or is Sauron's blood the key chemical agent of these rings? I think.
Go ahead.
I think it's just his blood. And
So do I.
when you say compared to the other rings that have been made, the 3 he never touched. The 7 he held a little teaspoon of mithril in his hand, and now you're saying the active ingredient of the 9 is his blood. That seems a
Yes.
bit more potent than anything else, which kind of gives a good origin story for why the 7 didn't necessarily corrupt the dwarves to like bend their wills to his. That just kind of made them greedy. But the 9 are just boom, they're his.
Yes, it definitely makes a case for the corruption being a hundo P, right? Because I think maybe he thought because if we're going off of the lore from the show, the the power in the mithril is the light of the Cimmerils, right?
Yeah,
Was it is that that's
kind of
what that story was about, right?
combined with the power of the Balrog.
And the elf, right?
Yep.
So I wonder if Sauron was like, there's too much good still in it, even with my little spell. So, but then that raises even more questions about why he went to Khazad-dûm.
And then it brings in the Balrog question itself, because we had that little flickering interaction in the fire of the Balrog.
Do you think next episode is gonna show Durin fighting the Balrog?
I think the Balrog shows up because we've got
I think it does
promo
too.
video.
It's got to, honestly. And the Balrog is what's gonna kill Dad Durin. I'm pretty sure. And I think they're just going to be able to like re-trap it possibly. And maybe this is how you're going to get Durin to wear the ring. Maybe Durin's going to use the ring to re-trap the Balrog.
Oh, there you go.
How about that?
I'm still rooting for Disa to be the ring bearer, but
Okay.
I like
Okay.
I like where you're going. I like where you're going.
All right, one more thing about the rings. With Galadriel leaving with the rings, do you think she's actually going to escape, or do you think that he's gonna find her before, because they face off, right? And somehow he's got Morgoth's crown. So what we don't see in that scene is the rings. We just see them face off. So is she gonna have the rings on her at that time? Is he gonna basically the question is he gonna get the rings by the end of this season?
If you bring up a good point, he has Morgoth's crown. If he has Morgoth's crown, does that mean he also has Galadriel's ring that Adar now has? And are we going to
Which
see
is
a little
another huge
trade?
twist.
You and I had some fantasy football trade talk going on earlier today. Are we going to see some trading of the rings?
Jeez Louise, I don't know. Because, yeah, that was another twist. Did not expect to see Adar have one of the elven rings. That's gonna be something else.
Yeah. I have one more thing with the 9 rings. Is there intended symbolism of the fact that Celebrimbor cut off his thumb and Celebrimbor now has 9 fingers to go one for each of the 9, just emphasizing the number 9? Or
Well,
is that me just reading
he
too
still
much
only
into it?
has 8 fingers, Brett.
Okay, 9 digits. Jeez. 9
um,
phalanges.
maybe I don't know. That's a little bit farther than I would think to go. So maybe they're going with that, but yeah, I don't know.
They sure love the squelching sound effects in this season too.
Yeah,
Ugh.
let's talk about Nenya for a second then. So thinking about where we left that battle scene, right? Elrond is on his knees in front of Adar, and Adar is holding the ring, and that's the cut scene, right? That's the end of that part. What happens to Elrond? Because obviously he lives. How does Elrond get out of that living? since he is defenseless and with seemingly no one else around him. And what happens to Adar and what happens to the ring? Adar is going to die next episode.
I
I
think
think
so.
that's pretty obvious. Who's going to kill him?
Okay, you ready for this one? What if Luke
Mm-hmm.
kills him?
I totally agree.
He's been too much of a main character to not have a good revenge kill.
Yep. And how do you like, speaking of that, how do you like how Adar has become the figure that they murdered a thousand plus years ago when it was Sauron who was willing to sacrifice as many orcs as necessary to achieve his goals?
Was it you who wrote down it's come full circle?
Yep, full circle. Well,
It's
if anything, we've been able to see the extent at which Sauron is able to deceive in Eregion, right? So he very well could talk the orcs into forget about what I said before. I know you've been on a lifelong crusade to extinguish me, but let's let bygones be bygones. He very well could pull that off. I hope that they have a better technique of how they're going to make that happen, but it is definitely possible. So,
we've at least got the first hurdle out of the way, which is how do you remove the allegiance to Adar, and
yes.
that's clearly happening, and I think they've done a good job of that.
Yes. However, I have issues with that as well, though, because isn't every quote unquote just cause for war is to defend, your family's freedom and well being? So, is Adar being a little careless with their lives? Maybe a little bit, but overall, the cause of his war is to prevent them from being enslaved by Sauron, which he knows will happen if they don't succeed in killing him, right?
Which is a
And
quote that
so,
he dropped. It was really good. Like, I love you too much to let you fall into Sauron's hands.
yes.
Which sounded
And
genuine.
I believe it was. And that's where I'm like, on the side of the good guys, when you're not trying to, write in this divorce from or rebellion from your leader, that part is met with a very inspiring speech about why we're fighting, and you know we can do this and it'll be worth it. you know in that same exact setting. So that was another part where I was like, yeah, it worked with the Sauron thing because he was very blatant about not caring about what happens to any of you. But with Adar, it's kind of more difficult because he definitely cares still. I think he's just a little bit more desperate to kill Sauron than the orcs would like.
And that's what, to me, it seemed like, especially with Damrod, who I think Damrod really just kind of ended up being a plot device to show that Adar's priorities, number 1 and 2, just slightly changed places. Priority number
Yes.
1 is kill Sauron. Priority
Yes.
number 2, take care of my children.
Save the children. Yes.
What did you? Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. To be fair, I think that Adar's strategy and heart is mostly in the right place. It's just he needs a new PR man. He needs someone to spin the message a little bit better than he is.
I'm gonna mention a scene, and I'm curious, in 3 words or less, your instant reaction. Sauron throws Myrdania off a cliff, and she gets chopped in half. Instant reaction.
I'm nervous about the 3 words. um fitting. I'll end it there. Fitting is good. Fitting is good because it was one of those things that you've described as Sauron having his little smirk of like, heh heh, I still gotcha, Brimby, you know? And then I was also a fan of Mirdania dying because I was not a particular fan of that theory that she would be Celebrion. So
Nice.
I'm glad she's out.
Yeah. The 3 word I said 3 words because I said 3 words out loud when it happened, and they were, well, see ya. Not particularly emotionally attached to her as a character.
No. So how did you like Sauron being able to not only like influence those other elves, but literally make them kill each other?
We are expanding the limits of Middle-earth magic, right?
Yes.
Did he mean anything more when he said you're not the only one who put yourself in my power? Like, does that mean that he's been working on them just as... I mean, he is controlling them.
Yes. Like they have no willpower.
They have lost
at
all will.
Yes.
Like that seems like more than what he's been doing with Celebrimbor.
Well, and you think those soldiers have spent significant time at all with him? No. They probably haven't even talked to him like one-on-one. And yet whatever little decision of loyalty that they made in their heart, I guess, was enough for him to worm his way in and be able to not only influence again, but control to the point of killing themselves.
Yeah, that for me was a big shock because that was the line that he says is something we've been talking about since our season 2 preview. Is what does he mean by that? Well, the context is he's able to control people.
Yeah, and I've been speaking of the scope of his power. I thought while watching this, I was like, man, that's some spell he's got with Celebrimbor because the city, his tower is literally falling in around him. And this has gone on for hours at this point. And Celebrimbor has still no idea. He's out on the patio drinking afternoon tea. You know? And I'm like, Sauron is obviously a very capable sorcerer because he's able to keep that whole delusion, is that the right word, up with Celebrimbor while he's also managing everyone else. And it makes me now believe the thing I've been questioning for the past 2 or 3 episodes, which is I think that he has been able to keep tabs on Khazad-dûm from Eregion through the king and maybe others, because the last couple episodes we have cut. There's been at least once when we have cut from something happening with King Durin and the corruption of his ring in Khazad-dûm straight to Anatar in Eregion, like in a trance almost. And I've been wondering, is he really able to control the king from Eregion through that ring from that distance? And I'm thinking the answer is yes.
I think that's a solid theory. It also explains the reach to get to that Palantir in Numenor and get into Farazan's, get on his radar at least. I'm loving it because this is, you watch Lord of the Rings and Sauron is just this eye floating in the sky. And okay, there's a bad guy. There's an evil spirit.
The big bad we never get to see. Yeah.
And we are seeing him now, especially this episode. and
Yep.
all this expanded power. And when Celebrimbor and Galadriel are talking, and I can't remember the quote exactly, but one of them's like, oh, it wasn't enough. And Celebrimbor's like, we're not enough. There is not enough to stand up to him.
Yeah.
And can't really argue right now.
Nope.
And that's where I'm like, do we give Celebrimbor credit for trying?
Well, and I'm putting myself in like Gil-galad's shoes right now. What is his plan at this point? Because
High
I would,
King Gil-galad. High King
yeah,
Gil-galad.
I would be like, we're screwed. Can we get another Eärendil up in this joint? Because we're gonna need some reinforcements.
that was quite pitiful when they formed the ranks against Adar marching in, and I need to go back and watch it. There couldn't have been more than 13 elves left on the field.
Okay, a little bit more with Celebrimbor. Sorry, I'm now looking at my notes. I've been going off the top of my head for a minute. So back to Celebrimbor for a sec. Initially, when he sees his reflection in the mirror, do you think that that was a depiction of how he looks outside of the delusion? Or was that a depiction of himself on the inside? Kind of seemed like later on in when the spell got broken that was how he really looked outside of the delusion, right?
Yeah, I think this episode showed that he was starting to break through the spell, and that was a moment where he broke through the spell. And the exterior is a reflection of the interior too.
And what a symbol of how he broke through the spell. Throwing Fëanor's hammer out the window.
The symbol of all of his pride.
Yep. And ambition.
Yep. That's where I'm like, oh, he is so good in this episode. You're just cheering for him, like, come on, man, you can get out of this.
Yes. Yeah. And kudos to the writers on this. This was a nice touch. Great symbolism there. So I liked that a lot. I liked how it got back to, he says, whatever this is, it is not a gift. Got back to, you're not the Lord of Gifts.
Yep.
Right? What did you think about Gil-galad in this episode? And do you think his appearance was worth anything?
King's place is always where there's the greatest need. It's like, well, thank you, High King, for gracing us with your presence.
I was just like, is this part of your contract? Like, you have to have so many appearances because
his spear was awesome, and I know there's lore surrounding the spear, and maybe we can get into that in Second Breakfast.
yeah,
because that was awesome. I wanted to see more of that. Was he just sitting out on the side, leaning up against that thing, and just waiting for the troll to come in? And
that was the thing, though. I was like, okay, if the High King is there, why is Elrond leading the charge that includes the High King? And then why is Adar treating with Elrond on the battlefield when the High King is diagonally behind him?
tremendous example of servant leadership. Here, why don't you go ahead? This will be a good learning experience for you, Elrond.
Now,
You go for it.
I can't understand why he sent Elrond in to negotiate in Adar's camp. That part I can get. But the
Leading the
leading the
charge.
charge and
Yep.
the initial, I think that's more the writer's fault than it is Gil-galad's fault. That is not how the Gil-galad of the text would have behaved, right?
Right. He is a warrior.
Yeah.
I was impressed with Adar's chess moves of rolling Galadriel out there at the front of the infantry line. I thought the cavalry charge came to an abrupt halt fairly quickly and unreasonably, but nice
Now,
chess move.
do you think well, let me put it to you this way. If you were Elrond, would you have stopped that charge? if Galadriel was Elrond, would she have stopped that charge?
As of this episode, I think yes, with what we saw in her character growth, right?
Okay.
I would be a little worried if I was Elrond and Galadriel was leading that charge in season 1.
Now, see, in typical what I would have expected there, in typical elven fashion as depicted in the movies and whatnot, I would have expected Legolas to have knocked an arrow and hit the guy right in the neck who was holding the spear at Galadriel's throat. The charge goes on, and we rescue Galadriel and kill all the orcs. But obviously, Region had to fall today, so
And we had to
they
have a
didn't.
kiss.
They didn't do that. Yeah.
My question was why.
Oh, sorry. I did think though when that happened, I was like, well, there went the charge and the whole benefit. Imagine if that charge would have come through. That was a pretty good host of cavalry there, meeting an army of orcs on foot on flat ground. And you think about the scene from The Return of the King when the Rohirrim rode over, just basically mowed over the entire orc army until the elephants showed up. It might have turned the tide, you know?
Yeah. Think of the actors. They're training to ride these horses at full charge. Ton of horses. They're riding with spears, for heaven's sake. And then they get to this line. Oh, stop here. Okay, great job, everyone, go home. No fighting from that. Yeah.
Yeah.
My question is, why doesn't Adar slice up Galadriel in his camp? Does he still see value in holding on to her as a bargaining chip of some sort? It just seems like, why not just cut her open?
Parade her out in front of his army? That's a good question because I don't know how much more information she could give him at this point.
Yeah.
Maybe he wants a companion himself one day and he's just going to keep her prisoner long enough until she becomes an Uruk.
That
I
would
don't know
be
what his
something.
plan is.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's not what happens, but I wonder, because, yeah, it doesn't make sense like you're saying. So one thing that I thought was did I hear this right? Did I hear that Adar is complimenting Elrond's mother and her beauty and wisdom? Melian, does he call her Melian of the Valar? Like insinuating that she is a Vala? Do you remember that part?
I remember that conversation. I don't remember the specific attributes he gives to her.
Well, we'll have to revisit that in Second Breakfast because she's definitely a Maya, not a Vala. That would be pretty epic if Elrond's mother was a goddess.
Elrond is Hercules at that point.
Yeah. We will see. We'll look back on that and come back to it for Second Breakfast, I guess. But I thought that's what I heard, and I was like, that's not right. That's a big gaffe.
Are we ready to go to Khazad-dûm?
Let's do it.
Khazad-dûm, we're only there for a relatively short amount of time. We don't see King Durin, but he is off the edge. It seems like he's going to die. I think that's a fair prediction. Next episode. We don't even see Disa this episode, but we know she's being threatened to be killed by the king's soldiers. Anything out of Khazad-dûm?
And she is the one who allegedly tells Narvi to tell her husband to recall the army.
Oh, that's right. So we do get this Disa versus Elrond conundrum.
Yes, and I'm telling you, I think that Sauron is controlling the mind of the king because I think that he has been able to discern through that connection that, or maybe other connections that he has in Khazad-dûm, not just through the king, maybe Narvi as well. I'm not sure. That an army of dwarves is wanting at least to come to the aid of these elves in Eregion. And I think he knows he would fail. And I think that that's when he sends the king on this desperate venture to dig it out himself to free the Balrog quickly, so that it can prevent the dwarven army from coming and ruining his plans. Because you're thinking, well, man, that's timing, of just in the nick of time, the dwarven army is unable to show up.
Yeah. What did you think, though, of Prince Durin's speech to the Khazad-dûm families?
Loved it. In fact, it was going to be, and maybe still is, I need to look and see. It is with the one that you want also. Those were my top 2 quotes of the episode. I loved it.
Yeah, great speech. We need. I want more Prince Durin. I will run through a wall for Prince Durin. The dwarves will probably run through a wall for him, literally, because they enjoy doing that kind of stuff.
I was going to say they do that in their spare time anyway. So
that's right. I hope we get to see Prince Durin in battle before the end of the show.
Now, do you think, with my prediction, we know Elrond's final opinion of the dwarves? We also know, however, that Durin, at least in the text, does help and fight on the side of the Last Alliance in the great battle of the Second Age. So do we think that there is going to be a redemption for the friendship? Because poor little Elrond's heart was extremely broken today.
He's sitting there on the field of battle, surrounded by his future captors, and you can just tell what he's thinking. He's like, "I've lost my friend."
Yep.
It's so interesting. The highlight of season 1 was these two. They were the heartbeat of the show, and we get them together for 12 seconds finally in this episode, and then we're kind of left hanging. I think they got to come back together in future seasons.
They do.
But I do think there will. I do think we're not done seeing the battle of wills between the two of them either.
Yes. I don't think that what happened today will be something easily forgotten by Elrond.
Ooh, yeah.
So we shall see if it continues to be a friendship or just simply an alliance in the future. With Elrond and Gil-galad, though, kind of going back to what we were talking about before, where we're at right now, what are your predictions on how do those guys make it out alive? Who kills Adar? And does Sauron get the rings when Galadriel finally meets up with him? Where does she meet up with him?
Yeah. Good questions. I might have to give some of them thought and come back to them second breakfast. I think how do Elrond and Gil-galad get out of there? My best guess right now is we surrender, and we have terms of surrender. I think that's how pitiful, and truly that's how the Siege of Eregion went. Like, they lost. They got whooped. I think that's what we're going to see. Who kills Adar? I think Gluck is my official prediction, that Gluck will kill Adar.
Yep.
And then how does Galadriel and Sauron meet up, and does he end up with the rings? I think he does end up with the rings. I'm going to save
this season, right?
Yes, this season. I'm going to save. I have an idea of what the last shot of the season is going to be. I'm going to hold on to that until our second breakfast episode. But I think it does involve him with the rings in hand.
Okay.
What about you? Those 3 questions.
I think that yours is definitely possible. I think another possibility is that they are taken prisoner and are able to escape in the chaos of Adar's army turning on him.
Okay.
I mean, a really epic way for them to escape is if Durin came to the rescue. I would love that personally. If
It'd make a much better TV show.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But I think that one of the first two are a lot more likely. I just don't think that there's no real other forces out there. Now, something to think about, however, is so in the text, Pharazôn comes over with an army of Númenóreans to do battle against Sauron and soundly defeats him, takes him prisoner back to Númenor, and that is how Sauron gets to Númenor. If they try and stay with that possibility, or with that storyline, maybe that is something that might have, maybe Pharazôn is going to, with this whole rebalancing of power between the faithful and the Kingsmen in Númenor that we had last episode, maybe he's going to try and gain some more favor by being a war hero. There's going to be a lot on the stranger next episode. Next episode's going to be very stranger heavy, I would assume.
Well, that Matt asked me before. He said, "Have we seen the last of the stranger this season? Do we think that he's going to be left until season 3?" And I hope not. I hope we see him. I think we do see him because in the soundtrack, y'all know that I love the soundtrack. There's a song at the end of the playlist called "The Staff," and we have not heard that piece yet.
See, there you go.
So I think we're going to get it. I hope so.
My goodness. It will just, yeah. Like, enough is enough, people. Enough is enough already.
Shall we check in on our bold predictions before we wrap up? This was actually an eventful episode for him.
Let's do it. So I took off 3 of the bold predictions because I think they're kind of decided, and I have started a scoreboard. Do you agree with the scoreboard as is?
Well, I saw that scoreboard. I was wondering, yeah, fine. Waldreg is not the Witch King. I think Theo could still be. Wait, I thought Waldreg was going to be.
You thought Waldreg was going to be the King of the Dead.
The King of the Dead.
Theo was going to be the Witch King.
Yeah, I'm not liking that one too much anymore.
So I took both of those off, and you are at a score of -2. I took off Muriel and Elendil with me at a score of +1. Matt's has yet to be taken off, but I think that his Gandalf prediction, it should be worth extra points, actually.
Yeah.
And then the ones we still have on the board are yours for Disa being the assassin of King Durin and future ring bearer,
which I think is still in play. I'm feeling
might happen next
better.
episode.
Yep.
Might happen next episode. Elrond and Durin endure. Took a nasty stab to the heart today. However, it might not be fatal. TBD on that one. We're on life support, but TBD.
Perfect description. Almost went into -1 territory.
Almost. Aarion and Kemen as Nazgul, future Nazgul. TBD still. I don't think we're going to find out that until season 3. Probably well into season 3, actually.
Yep.
Gandalf the Blue, we could find out next episode. Sauron personally kills Prince Durin.
I think
probably
that's
not going to find out this this season, but
that's a season 5 prediction for me.
Yes. Kamul is one of the masked riders in Rune. Also not going to happen this season. And then Lord Belzegar is the Witch King. TBD. Oh, Elrond did not use the ring to unblock the river. Take that one off. -3 for Gryffindor.
Well, we have. I am not a Gryffindor. I am a Hufflepuff. Thank you very much.
Oh, dang it.
Dang it. That's what I say too. Dang it. Hey, we've got one more episode.
My
Leave
condolences.
it on there one more episode.
Okay. That does bring up one more question that I have is we thought that the ring was gonna be used in some fashion, right? And still nothing.
Yeah. I think we
Do you
started.
think Adar is gonna use it?
Oh, man. Why not? Let's see. Let's see what he can do with it. Is Círdan going to come rolling in and using his ring? Gil-galad
Okay.
has a ring. Why isn't Gil-galad using his ring? Let's use the
Exactly.
dang rings. Come on, guys.
Yeah, Círdan is he he was such a positive at the beginning of the season. He's being very annoying off screen to me
Come on, man. Let's
in the
go.
second half of this season. Man, I
Hey,
will be jaw on the floor if Adar uses that ring.
yeah, what natural abilities would that amplify for him?
Who knows?
Yeah. Maybe we give it some thought and throw out some ideas at second breakfast.
Did you notice how he was totally CGI'd at that last scene with Elrond?
Yeah, what the heck was up with that?
I have no idea.
Let's forget that happened, Jeff.
Yeah, I don't know why they did that because it wasn't like there was like some epic scenery behind him even. It was just like it was kind of like a post recording edit that they wanted to make
Could it have
and
had
didn't have the
anything
actor around or something. I'm not sure.
could it have had anything to do with the fact that he was gripping the ring on Elrond's neck at the time and that was some sort of life-giving effect? I don't know.
Maybe. Any other new bold predictions, Brett?
Oh, not for right now. I'll probably have some at second breakfast. Hopefully better than my last ones.
Perfect. Second breakfast is always great because it's not, 2 or 3 in the morning. We've had some time to digest. Second breakfast is where all of our good bold predictions have come, I feel like.
That's right. Yeah, I think we're good. I would just, again, a plug for those listeners. I would love to hear what you think the final shot of the season is going to be next week.
Yes.
And we'll read some of those out loud.
Or
And
any answers to any of the questions that we asked today that we didn't really get a good answer to.
yeah, I'm excited. I'm feeling just so thrilled with this season. And I'm feeling quite confident that the finale will be more than satisfactory.
It better be. It better be. And
Quote
end
of the
with the
week.
quote of the day.
Yep, let's do it. I'll read. I had two. I'll start with one of mine. It's
Just do both of yours, and I'll do mine on the second breakfast. How's that?
oh, are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. So first one comes. Well, they're both from Celebrimbor. One is an admission of fault and weakness, which I thought was quite tender given the circumstances. He says to Galadriel, "He, Anatar, offered me what I wanted, so I blinded myself to him." What a cool admission from a guy who has been through hell.
Mm-hmm.
That he's willing to accept that blame. I've mentioned it a little bit. I give him all the credit in the world for what he tried to do in this last episode. And then finally we get kind of our classic quote. He says, "It is not strength that overcomes darkness, but light. Armies may arise, hearts may fail, yet still light endures and is mightier than strength, for in its presence all darkness must flee." And then he says goodbye in Elvish to Galadriel. Thank you, Brimby.
Beautiful. Yep,
Love you, man.
that was one of my two favorite quotes of the episode. And in the initial like setting up for that quote, it kind of made you think that it's a total foreshadowing of how they are going to beat Sauron with the hobbits, right? Not
Thousands of years
strength, but
later.
light. Yep.
Yeah.
And he's like, the elves need to understand that. The elves are never going to understand that, actually. It's only
Nope.
going to be Gandalf.
Yeah. So if this was the swan song for Brimby, very well done. Well done,
Yep.
Charlie Edwards.
Yeah, hats off, and I hope that he finishes strong next week. I hope that we all know what's coming, but I hope he faces it like a man.
He will. Love this guy. Awesome show. Still something that's a lot of fun. Many thanks to Matt, our editor. We look forward to joining you at Second Breakfast, and then for the season finale, 7 days from now. Thank you for joining our fellowship on this episode of The Last Alliance, a Rings of Power podcast.
And if you enjoyed this episode even half as well as you should have liked, or liked half of it half as well as it deserved, please subscribe, comment, and share.
We'll see you next time.